You've tuned in to chipsgrooveradio with your hosts, Mike and John.
People haven't really responded, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's my Jan 1 is my 40th birthday, so yeah, I said I don't want to know anything, I don't want to plan anything, I don't want to make any decisions because I always am the one making decisions. So
Yeah, I have a show on New Year's Eve, so that's what I'll be doing.
Nice.
Soup.
That should be fun.
Yeah, I think it should be a good time. Hopefully, there's a bigger crowd than usual, but yeah, I think it'll be good.
Nice.
Well, John, I was listening to our soundtrack today, and I was asking myself, does John have much experience with action-adventure games?
No. This is a genre of games that I have such a huge blind spot in, because I didn't play console games after probably the N64, and even then I was into PC pretty early on. So like the whole and it's kind of interesting. We were talking about, like, when we were talking about Myst a couple episodes ago, and those kind of action adventure games, like the forget the name of the guy, but
Tim Schafer.
There was Tim Schafer. Those action adventure point and click. Well, not action adventure games. Adventure games. That this is kind of like the evolution of those in some way, or at least in one direction. Maybe some other games went in a different direction, but this is like, I feel like this is the sequel to that kind of adventure game. This is like making it palatable for the mass audience. Yeah,
this is the Michael Bay experience of of action movies, where it's flashiness all over the place, but. Right. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, obviously, for reference, the Grim Fandangos, the point and click adventures, are more exploration, but yeah, obviously, a game like this is going to take that to a whole new level and keep people on their toes just a little bit. But yeah, I think this is that evolution for sure.
Yeah, like games like Silent Hill or Resident Evil are maybe a bit closer to those original adventure games, because the action in those games is a bit more subtle and a bit more only if you're desperate you actually fire
engage,
shots and that kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas it looked like this was where action was in all caps. Action adventure. You know what I'm saying?
Just on the whiteboard. Action.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely want to take you and the listeners back to 2001. Okay. I'm hanging out with two friends of mine, Storm and Brett, and we go to the local video store to rent some games. We got together once every couple weeks or something on the weekend, and we ended up coming back with Silent Hill 2 and Devil May Cry. And I believe they had come out within a month of each other. And we took this random opportunity to play these two games that we knew nothing about. And I don't think, I had never heard of Devil May Cry, and Silent Hill 2, I was aware of Silent Hill because I had a friend who was very into Resident Evil.
Okay.
So I was aware of the genre of
yeah.
survival horror. We popped in Silent Hill 2, and well, since I've already reviewed it and the soundtrack, I think it's safe to say that we can skip talking about it for now, outside of saying it was very important to me. But Devil May Cry was a completely different beast, and it just had such fluid movement, something I had really never seen in a video game, that it was so crazy. The edginess of the characters was undeniable. I think I was a sophomore in high school, so edgelords were kind of cool back then still, and I think Dante might be the original edgelord in my eyes, but he did it with a little bit of grace, and most importantly, I think he did it with an incredible amount of style in the series. And He utilized both a sword and his twin pistols, ebony and ivory, which made him very, very versatile. Protagonist that had a lot of tools at his beck and call, which I thought was pretty cool. So I was still pretty new to the PlayStation 2 at that time. You know, the only game I had really played for PS2 was Final Fantasy X. It's very much turn-based. And, you know, like it or not, I did not love that game as much as everyone else did. I thought it was the weakest in the series. But, you know, so I wasn't used to the fluidity of the combat like they showed in Devil May Cry. So it was unlike anything I had ever experienced in a 3-dimensional game. I'll say that. You know, I had
watching through some of the full play videos. It definitely seemed like it was seemed like a game that was the genesis of that style of action combat. Are they still tank controls in that game?
No,
but with like
okay. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but it definitely has close ties to Resident Evil. And this is that pivotal moment, I think, where they decided that a different third-person action game could be done. And, you know, Resident Evil 2 and 3, those were still tank controls. And then, you know, a couple years later, here's Devil May Cry. And a little bit more opportunity here with the PlayStation 2's hardware. But, yeah. So sitting down with my friends to play this game we had never heard of. It was interesting because, you know, we were taking turns and I was becoming the one who grasped it a little quicker than everyone else. And it eventually became them watching me for that day or whatever. But it was fun because, you know, they were helping me find stuff and we were experiencing it together.
Yeah.
Fast forward a week, I get my paycheck from my job and I head over to Sam Goody in the local mall. And I pick it up. It was a good time. Brought it home and just dove in.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game. To watching some of the video of I can see how it, especially now that I know it looked like it was tank controls from the way the controller or the player was playing, but knowing it's not tank controls. If that was me playing that on a PS2, I probably would have had my mind blown. Just by the sheer like fluidity of controls, the combos of like you have this whole like combo meter or whatever in the game.
Yep.
And the like melee and kind of quasi range combat with the guns. It looked like a really fun game to play.
Yeah, and I think
outside of the adventure part.
Absolutely. And I think the combo element is what helped differentiate it from other action games. It was just that tweak that really set it apart. And basically, it's a combo-based combat system. So you're graded as you go. And the system went from D all the way up to S, S being the stylish, you know, whatever. And it increased as you completed combos. And I think in this game specifically, it focused on how many consecutive hits you got on your enemies. In the later games, it would evolve even more to, okay, you've been shooting with your gun for a while. That's not cool anymore. So your rank would start to deplete. You'd have to keep it fluid and ever changing to get all the way up to triple S style, which was insane. And it just gets crazier and crazier all the way up to Devil May Cry 5. But in this one, it was mostly the frequency of hits and not getting hit yourself. So evasion was part of it. And then you could taunt the enemies to kind of... There was this hidden meter in between hits. It would slowly deplete, which would slowly deplete your score. If you spent too much time in between consecutive hits, it would slowly go down. So you could taunt your enemies to kind of give it a little bit of a bump on your way to other enemies. So kind of expand that time down or whatever. But
was it a game where you replayed levels to get a better score kind of thing, or was it just kind of as you went?
You were graded at the end of every level from D all the way up to S, and based on your time beating the level, how many hits you took, your versatility. And it was like, okay, I got to go back through this and try to do as good as I can do. And that's definitely something that's carried through every sequel. They have new ways of challenging you to keep that action at the forefront. Capital A action, this whole series. And they want you to be as clever and conniving as you can be in combat to try new things. And that's one of the things that really caught me about this game. It's not just point and shoot like Resident Evil for that reference. It's very much, how do I get through this and how can I do it in a cool way?
Right.
So it really challenged you to kind of think outside the box. And I just really took to this game.
Well, I feel like in a game like that where it's kind of rhythm based, where you're trying to make your way through enemies, that the soundtrack would be immensely important.
Oh yeah,
in driving that the kind of that skill challenge.
Yeah, the music for this game is composed by Masami Ueda, Masato Kuda, and Misao Senbongi. Now, it is to my understanding that Ueda has been with Capcom for a while at this point, and he's done. I believe he did the really haunting soundtrack to Resident Evil 2 and many other games. I believe he was the main composer for Devil May Cry of the three.
That's what I saw. That's what I saw on Wiki. I don't know how accurate that was, but yeah,
okay,
it seems like it was the case. Yeah,
yeah, and he utilizes several styles to create this album. He really aimed for the core of the soundtrack to be upbeat and cool in order to really represent that fast-paced action and I think Dante's personality, but nevertheless aimed to capture the gothic setting and the dark story as well. There is a stark contrast in styles in this soundtrack where the ambient music and the wandering around music, if you will, is very dark, very sinister. A lot of dark pianos and sustained ringing out, and there's choirs in the background that you can hear. There's at one point it sounds like for just a moment, it sounds like with all the choir and all the orchestral ambience going on, you can hear what sounds kind of like a carnival for a few seconds. Yeah. And I think that's because a lot of the enemies in the first game are marionettes. I don't know specifics, but outside of the battles, he really focused on setting the mood. It was an interesting combination of gothic horror and this high-octane, action-packed combat. So it's a really interesting listen for me, but I think it really succeeds in all elements of capturing the intensity of battle and the subtlety of the exploration.
Yeah, I think it really comes through when you literally starting out the soundtrack. You have the "Let's Rock" title scene, which is like a tongue-in-cheek rock, very high octane. Couple, what is it, 20 seconds or whatever.
Right.
Let's rock, baby.
And then the next one is the theme of Sparta, Devil Sunday, which is like a very drawn out kind of Castlevania-esque like horror kind of theme. So it's like this such a dichotomy between those two styles, and I love it because it seems like this is what this whole game is about. It's about the horror, but it's also about like doing really cool shit with your sword.
It is, and it does. You're exactly right. It does have a Castlevania feel to it, with the orchestral strings and the choirs in the background. But that's what I'm talking about when there are these competing tones, but they really kind of mesh together pretty well, I would say, throughout the game. And where the soundtrack really shines for me, obviously, is the battle themes. The music gets really erratic and heavy. It keeps you anxious, but more importantly, it gives you that adrenaline kick during combat, and it only continues to impress as you increase the difficulty. There are several difficulties in this game, with the final difficulty, if I may be so bold, is to say it's completely unfair. I've beaten it, but it's hard. And the harder the game, the more impressive the battles, and the better you feel with that music chugging away. Let me just say, it's like,
it helps you like focus on what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you're playing it on the easiest level, right, it almost feels like too much. okay, this isn't as cool as the music sounds. But then when you ramp up to Dante Must Die mode or whatever it's called, it's just insane. And the music is really keeping you not just on your toes, but it keeps you wanting to conquer these different battles in different ways. And I think that's so fun.
Does this game remind you of like a Dark Souls game in a way? Like, is this do you feel like Dark Souls kind of came from, or maybe was inspired by Devil May Cry?
I would say on some level, yeah, because the difficulty of this game is unmatched, I would say, in terms of when you're playing it on that highest difficulty. It is pretty much a Dark Souls game where you're two hits and you're dead or something like that. Dark Souls is extremely difficult, but it's much slower. It's not as flashy, of course, but it's a very deliberate game, very plotting, but still suspenseful. And I would say those games, that's why everyone's like, if you don't play Dark Souls, you're not a real gamer, which I hate. But
I didn't play Dark Souls.
Well, I neither have I. So we're not real gamers, John.
We're not real gamers. Yeah.
No, don't know what it's like. But I hate that mentality. But I would say, yeah, for sure, they probably took some mechanics from Devil May Cry, because I still think, and I don't think I'm wrong, but this game is still influencing third-person action games. I just finished, ladies and gentlemen, as of this recording, 2 a.m. this morning, I finished Final Fantasy 16. I platinumed it.
Yay. He did
finally, along with the DLC. So I got through it. Thank Christ.
Well, if we're giving congratulations, I did finish Cyberpunk 2077, the DLC and the main game. So
awesome! I'll have to get your.
We're finishing games over here.
We're finishing games left and right. Just knock them off the shelves.
That's right.
But I would say that it's still influenced by Devil May Cry. Final Fantasy 16. I would be lying if I didn't, for moments here and there, think I was playing Dante.
Yeah.
The combat in Final Fantasy 16 is so fluid. Evasion is very important. It's very, very much part of how successful you are in combat, and changing things up, knowing when and when not to use a skill or a magic ability. It felt so much like Devil May Cry. And I know there are plenty of other games that go into that mixing bowl of third-person action, but I still feel like Devil May Cry was that, all right, we're going to turn it up a notch, and we're going to really challenge players to get creative. And
especially for a time like that, where you have games like you said, Resident Evil and Silent Hill, which have a much maybe more plotting and slow take on the adventure action adventure game. You have a game that really kind of tries something new in the early 2000s, and it seems to pay off. Although I don't know how popular Devil May Cry was. I never was really familiar with it, and I'm not really a console person either. So like, I'm not sure how much that's, everybody who had a PS2 played Devil May Cry kind of thing. But
it was a sleeper hit. It got really good reviews. It took not the world by storm. I don't want to say that, but it, like I said, I had never heard of it outside of renting it randomly at our local video store, and I just fell in love with it. And then when I started researching it on, when the internet was an innocent place, it was just getting great reviews left and right, and it spawned a sequel, which was terrible. And I won't get into that, but it was immediately a hit. And I would say people were surprised by it because it was a brand new IP, and it just stunned a lot of people. So I don't think that I am alone in feeling as blown away by it when I was 15, 16. But I think it definitely changed the game for third-person action games. And just one song that I wanted to mention is, it's not the fastest song on the album by any stretch of the imagination, but it has a distinguished power behind it. And it's the fight with Griffin. It's called Flock Off, for, the tongue-in-cheek references, obviously.
Flock Off.
It does this really slow build-up with timpani and strings. And then you kind of hear that fade out, and as that's fading out, the heavy guitars and electronica fade in. And they crescendo into this slugfest of steady palm-muted electric guitar and this blaring siren to give the track this incredible amount of urgency. And it is a boss fight, so it's a threatening fight for sure. I don't know. This track is just, it not only gets me amped up for a slog of a fight, but that siren acts as this chilling warning of the danger of this fight. And it just takes the track to another level. You know, the danger is incredible right now. While the galloping guitar is a simple riff, as a metalhead, it's layering with the drumming. It just has so much strength. And I'm sorry, John, I get a boner every time I hear it. No,
it's fine. It's fine. I love a song that really comes out of nowhere for boss battles. And the way that this whole album is mixed, where you have the atmospheric horror elements that kind of slow everything down. They add to the background. But then you can have these really punchy metal riffs, very, very in-your-face tracks that really bring you back into focus. I'm listening to the song now, like it's a really driving track that I can tell is a boss battle, and it makes you want to the siren comes on, you're getting those power chords through it really driving you to action.
Yeah.
And that's what a great boss battle song does.
Yeah. You're trying to calculate your next move while you're listening to this song, and it's so catchy, so fun for me. It really, really, when you talked about it being a rhythm game earlier, I never really thought of it that way, but when you are in these fights, you're going with the music because it's all the boss battles, and the battles in general are very catchy. They've got catchy themes. Even, again, they are simple at times, but they really work at keeping you engaged with the fight. And it's really fun and really exciting when you can swing your sword and shoot your guns and go in for that next hit, because the music's crescendoing and you want to feel cool yourself, and you're attacking the bad guys to the rhythm of this music. And I've never really thought of it that way, but that's definitely what I do. And it's a good time. But
yeah, for sure.
John, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
Did you know that this game was originally going to be Resident Evil 4?
Really?
That is one of the...
If only.
Well, it's one of the fun trivia things that, you know, floats around video game development. This is one of those things that it seems like everyone knows at this point. But yeah, this was originally being developed as Resident Evil 4.
It was too cool.
It was too cool. Well, the production team, they started the development, and then after some time, they're like, this doesn't feel like it's going to fit with Resident Evil. And then it just evolved and mutated into this game. In fact, when Resident Evil 4 eventually came out a few years later, you can really see the influences. It takes place on a secluded island. It's an older location, you know, kind of a decrepit castle. There's a lot more demonic stuff going on in Resident Evil stuff rather than just zombies, straight up zombies.
Yeah.
The game's protagonist is Leon Kennedy, and you can, when you think about it, you can see the resemblance to Dante with Leon. It's you can tell they were using his character model at first. It's like
like a tone shifted game, basically. Like it was originally I love a game like that where this had been probably developed for a little while before they were like, maybe this doesn't work. But this game is also really good, so we have to make it something.
Yeah.
Because if we don't make this game, it's a super fun game. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it was a hit, and it was really well received. So we'll produce it, but it's not going to be Resident Evil.
Yeah. When I finally got around to playing Resident Evil 4, it wasn't until it came out for the Wii. I believe of all the games I could play on the Wii, I bought Resident Evil 4 and played through it. But I was blown away by the ending of Resident Evil 4, and this isn't spoiling anything, but the coda of both games involve these death-defying escapes from the island. And in Devil May Cry, it's on this old biplane, and in Resident Evil 4, you escape on a jet ski. And in both games, you've got a woman on the back. Well, in Resident Evil 4's case, it's the president's daughter, because much more serious of a game, I guess. It's just like all these small things really went into Resident Evil 4, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like comparing it with Devil May Cry from 5 years earlier. I'm like, wow, this really was Devil May Cry, but it was really cool.
Do you think they were like, okay, this is not Resident Evil 4, but it'll be its own game. We'll produce it and release it as Devil May Cry. Then they realized it was a really good game and people liked it, and they're like, well, we kind of need to now, we want to make Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
You like this game.
And that's a strange thing, because I really think that in some backwards way, this game influenced Resident Evil 4, because it's a much more freeing experience. You're not tank controls.
Yeah.
It is, the camera's more locked in Resident Evil 4, where it's over the shoulder, which ironically went on to inspire a whole new genre of third-person action games. But yeah, I would say they got influenced by the original creation of Resident Evil 4, which turned into Devil May Cry.
Which is the better game?
I will always go to Devil May Cry. Not because Resident Evil 4 is bad. I think I would be strung up and killed for saying Resident Evil 4 is a bad game. I would never say that. It's a great game. But just for who I was at the time, and I like Dante, man. He's always been cool, however ridiculous he is. And he'll always be the number one edgelord in my heart.
That's awesome. There's a couple other songs that I think, the song that you kind of pointed out epitomizes the hard rock metal aspect of the kind of boss fights or some of the more action-oriented side. But songs like Cathedral early on in the soundtrack really give you that Castlevania, and it's a pipe organ and kind of old world horror style music, and then Evil Vacuum, which is later on, Evil Vacuum, in parentheses, Hell, which is like a really subtle, atmospheric piece, but it has this like, and this is kind of, it brings me back to Quake, the original Quake.
Yep.
Has that like rhythmic thrum that is kind of the heartbeat of the song, and it has those weird voices that come in and out from around from like between your ears and stuff. Kind of gives you that sense of lurking horror. I think that really nails the atmospheric tone of what I think the game is like. If the game is taking itself seriously, at its most serious point are these songs, and then at the least serious point, it's the boss battle.
Absolutely.
but it does have it's able to do both of those things, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and to comment on your evil vacuum, I think you're spot on with that, because you teleport to this alternate mirrored universe of which is basically the underworld, and yeah, it's much more fleshy, much more disgusting, and it does have that Quake feel where everything is very organic and horrifying. So yeah, right. I'm with you there. But yeah, you said it perfectly. I think this type of music for the game really is where it takes itself very seriously, and they get to play with the battles, and that's what helps keep this immersive, because when you're outside of a battle, it really does feel like a horror game. There's not a whole lot of spookiness, I guess, but there is danger lurking, and in the second half of the game, the castle is very dark because I believe it's nighttime, so you get a much scarier feel. There's just like a spotlight from your character pretty much as you travel these huge halls and narrow corridors. It is very, very haunting when you're not in battle, and you can be caught off guard by some enemies. So they do a really good job of melding that stuff. As for influence, I want to say that this game is just exceptional for the time and really informed future action games on just what they could accomplish. The soundtrack itself brings an energy and, of course, style to the game that really matches Dante's no bullshit attitude. He's a smart ass. You can't help but enjoy his commentary throughout the game. And despite the game's wooden dialogue performances at times, we are, after all, in the infancy of voice acting in video games. The characters do come off as enjoyable, and I did care about them. And even when the melodrama is ramped up towards the end of the game, it's short and you can kind of look past it. It's not important. The story of this game's not very important, but the music really accentuates the themes in the narrative and the gameplay. The sappy stuff is minimal, but they even took the time to compose a song for that scene or those couple scenes. They dialed up the mood there. There's a real sense of encouragement with this game as a whole, and that includes the soundtrack. And what I mean by encouragement is finding it within yourself to push the envelope. I would venture to say the director himself didn't exactly know what he was getting into with this game until it really started to take shape.
Yeah.
Because Resident Evil obviously was nothing like this in terms of fluidity. They made some bold decisions to create an experience that not just emulates some of the third-person action titles that came before it, but really pushed the genre forward in ways that, again, are still noticeable today. So the music, along with all that, it was a combination like I'd never really heard at the time. It was daring.
Yeah.
Incredibly punchy, and it just combined themes I never stacked together before, which made that experience even more unique. And it was that perfect capper to that encouragement I was talking about. The creativeness of the team, which inspired the music, which keeps players fluid in the way they play the game and engage in combat, which it allows us, again, to come up with creative solutions. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and you take something that is very atmospheric, some of the songs that are more atmospheric, and they can really draw the player back into the world itself after those kind of over the top action, boss battles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, give me some final thoughts. Anything you wanted to put on this album?
It was pretty surprising, kind of the tone shifts that you have in the music, but it all kind of works together. It's a soundtrack that you could definitely put on in the background, doing some task or maybe even play for a kind of horror RPG. I think it would certainly fit playing like a vampire game with the Devil May Cry soundtrack on the background. It nails the atmospherics, and then when it comes to the punchy tracks, it really brings you into it and gets you to focus in on the soundtrack again, kind of rock out to them. So it's a great ebb and flow of energy, and I think any soundtrack worth its salt does that well, and it just definitely does it well.
Absolutely. Now, you can buy this soundtrack right now. Ladies and gentlemen, highly encourage you to head over to lacedrecords.com and buy the album. They have 2 versions. They have the 4 LP version and then the 2 LP version, which, still cool, but not as stylish.
Not as cool.
Not as cool. As for the composers, you can find Ueda on iTunes. I believe you can even find the soundtrack on iTunes. Masato Kuda, again, also contributed. He has a very extensive career. He contributed a lot of the battle themes, I believe, including the final battle. And you can find some of his works on iTunes as well. As for Misao Sembongi, she doesn't have quite the catalog. She did work on this, and then I believe the Resident Evil 1 remake in 2002, and then Resident Evil 4 when it eventually came out. So yeah, this is just one of my favorites to listen to, and right now it's giving me the urge to go back to it. I don't know if I will, but
it's a game that I definitely appreciate. Maybe not a genre that I play much, but it's probably a game that I would have played in that genre that I back in the day, where I probably wouldn't have played Resident Evil or Silent Hill, but I might have played Devil May Cry had I seen it.
Yeah, I believe Capcom, after the success of this game, they came out with this game. I saw it in the video store a year or 2 later. It was called Chaos Legion. It looks like they tried to rip themselves off because they produced Devil May Cry, and then they come out with this game called Chaos Legion. It looks terrible, and it just looks like a complete ripoff. But
that's funny.
Yeah. So I would give this soundtrack a 10 out of 10 marionettes.
I think I got to give it a 9 out of 10 Circles of Hell. I think it's it definitely ticks the boxes. I probably don't have the same nostalgic
for sure
you do, but it's definitely great soundtrack.
Great soundtrack. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the show. Thank you so much for listening. And John, if you would like to say goodbye, please do so.
I'll see you all on the 3rd Circle of Hell.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please rate and subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Also, check out Magus Media's other podcast, This Is Not Happening, Another X-Files podcast, for complete episode breakdowns, insightful banter, and inane babble. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Well, hello there, Internet people. My name is Josh, and I am one of the hosts of the Nastagram RPG podcast. We're an actual play podcast, and we're good. And why are we good? Well, let's let the other host tell you. Dan.
Hey, everyone. If you like authentic, real-world sound effects, our lasers go pew-pew.
I love it. Matt.
Skip me.
Coming back to Matt.
Ryan.
Okay, so after 2 decades of trying, we finally mastered the 3.5 grapple.
We're not doing that.
Never mind.
Try again.
Scratch that.
Check it out. Look it up.
Cut. John?
If you're looking for a RPG podcast that plays a whole hell of a lot of games, you like to spice the life.
Spice it up.
Spice it up.
Matt, you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. If you enjoy bad accents and overacting, you'll enjoy our podcast.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
And Jake, bring us home.
I like to just say, we didn't just throw a phone on the table and hit record. Like, Josh does a damn good job with the editing. And
Facts.
if you care about that, you will not be disappointed.
That's right. We spent a bunch of money that we don't make on the podcast.
100%.
So check us out, Nastagram RPG Podcast. You can find us on all the goddamn podcast apps, and we'll see you there.
That's nasty.